excited to have our next guest on. She is a British space scientist. She's a science educator. You'll see her on TV. You can see her lectures online. They're absolutely brilliant. Welcome for fact number 13. It is Dr. Maggie Aderin-Pocock. Hello.
Hello.
Look at that background.
Maggie, are you actually in space?
I am. I decided I need to get out there. It's a bit iffy, but it's worth it.
I just went outside just now to see if I could see any stars, and it was too cloudy.
Yeah, actually, here it's raining, so so I bring my space with me.
Well, thanks for coming on, and let's kick into your facts. So it's time for fact number 13, and that is Dr. Maggie.
Thank you. The moon used to have areas called the Land of Healthiness and the Peninsula of Insanities. The bit Neil Armstrong and his crew landed on was nearly called Sicily.
No.
Sicily.
So cool.
Why? Is it particularly reminiscent of Sicily? Does it have very good roadside cafes? Fine wines?
Sitting outside in that cafe culture? No, not really. It's pretty inhospitable on the moon.
Yeah. Why Sicily? Do we know? They're just short on names.
There were two naming conventions, and so that happened at virtually at the same time. So there was a chap called, and I'm going to pronounce his name very badly, but I think it's Hevelius. Anyway, he was a Polish guy, and he came up with these wonderful maps of the moon because he had a telescope on his roof, as you do, and he came up with these brilliant maps. And he came up with these names, and rather than come up with anything new, he was using sort of like the Mediterranean, and so he had sort of Corsica, and he had sort of Sicily. And at the time, when people looked at the moon, they saw these dark areas, and they actually thought that they were seas. And so he thought, yeah, okay, Sicily, in the sea, and they called it the Mediterranean. So just sort of reusing what was here on Earth. But another chap at the same time came up with a naming convention, and that was an Italian chap called Riccoli. Mm-hmm. But he came up with these amazing names, and I'm just going to I've got a few here, like the Sea of Showers, the Bay of Rainbows, the sort of Sea of Sincerity, and so these really evocative, provocative names. And so the other ones got sort of disregarded, and they went with the more romantic names. And so it was, for a little while, going to be called Sicily, but it was got owned by these more romantic names.
So the Oceans of Tranquility, which is quite famous, they genuinely thought that was an ocean when they named it that.
Yes, because for many years people looked at the moon and they thought, yeah, these dark areas, and dark patches, and they assumed that they were water. And I suppose it's not surprising because you look at the Earth, 4/5 of the Earth's surface is water. Yeah. So yeah, why not the moon? Really, it's sort of our partner in crime. And so I think they thought that similar. But the interesting thing is now we thought, when the Apollo moon landers sort of went to the moon, they thought the moon was really dry. But further analysis showed that there is some water on the moon, which is quite exciting.
Oh. Is there any in the Sea of Tranquility?
Yeah.
Is there any water in the seas, or?
Well, so what we did, we found water at the poles, and the poles are interesting because they get very little sunlight. It's just like the poles here on Earth. And so in some dark craters on the moon, they never see sunlight. So sort of volatiles like water and other things collect there and freeze there because the temperature is so cold out of the sunlight. And so there are sort of large amounts of water at the poles. But now we're finding some and we're talking it's drier than the driest desert on Earth. So when we talk about water, we're not talking about sort of seas or swimming pools, but water that could be sort of mined in the future and used for the people to live on the moon. So I find that very exciting because I am a lunatic.
Oh, is that what you call yourselves? Lunatics.
Well, a self-certified lunatic, and that's quite.
How very
cool.
It's so weird to think that they were going to just make it a carbon copy of Earth, name-wise. And it's exactly what we've always done colonizing. We're so unimaginative. Whenever humans travel anywhere, they just name the same stuff, New England or New York, New Amsterdam. I mean, if you go to Australia, literally every place is just a village in the UK. And we were going to do the same to the moon. Thank God this person came along with a better idea.
Yeah, I know. And he really hammed it up, though. I mean,
yeah, he really went over the top.
The thing is about him is it was in a book, this guy Riccioli, it was in a book that was refuting Galileo. And it was Galileo was being persecuted at the time, and he was on the side of the persecutors, saying that, you know, this idea that everything revolves around the sun is absolute nonsense. Everything must revolve around the earth.
Yes.
So we do use his names, but he didn't quite get everything right.
No.
Not quite.
Diplomatic.
And also, he named a lot of the craters and things after people, and he only named 2 of the craters on the whole moon after women, and they were Katharina and Hypatia. And even worse, now we know that the Katharina was named after Saint Catherine, and we think that Saint Catherine was probably the same person as Hypatia, as in it was based on that. It was not a saint that didn't exist, but was based on her. So actually, 2 names for one person.
just one.
Right.
Yeah.
But we still have the same problem today. Of the 12 people that have been to the moon, all of them have been men. So I'd really like to reverse that. I want to go to the moon, just to make that right, really.
Well, yeah, that's the main reason. Yeah.
What was your fact, Anna, about Venus?
Yeah, there is. Well, so the International Astronomical Union has really exciting naming conventions. I love them, love reading through them. And one is that Venus is all women, right? So every feature on Venus, I think, is named after a woman. And this was decided in the 1970s. And so some are goddesses, some are real people, some are just random girls' names. But there's one feature on it that was named before this came in, and it's the tallest mountain. And that's called Maxwell Montes, and it's named after the male physicist James Clerk Maxwell. So James Clerk Maxwell is sitting the tallest thing on Venus, surrounded by 2,030 women.
Wow.
Can you say it's the only penis on Venus?
The only penis on Venus. Yeah.
There should be some kind of exchange program where Maxwell Monte gets to go and visit the moon, and Hypatia and St. Catherine get to go and visit Venus.
Like wine
Girls.
Yeah, probably not in the spirit of the thing, but yeah.
Also a difficult geological undertaking, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
Bit of a nightmare, but
Haven't thought it through. Riccioli did get one thing right. He's put on the top of the map with the really beautiful names that you just described, Maggie. He said, "Nec homines lunam incollunt." No men reside on the moon. So that at least was something he got right.
Yeah, but did you think women resided on the moon instead then?
That's a good point.
No men. But
He's not going to put me there, yeah.
That's why he's naming them all after men. He's trying to get the balance right. It's full of women.
Did they,
parity.
Yeah.
Maggie, did they keep some of the names from... I can't remember. Oh, Hevelius was the other name that you said.
Yes.
Did they keep some of those?
A few, but they actually named a crater after him. So even though most of his naming convention has been lost, there is a crater on the moon named after him. So he's not completely forgotten. So,
Okay.
Because I thought there was a Mare Mediterranea on the moon, but I'm probably wrong about that.
I think there is 2. I assume it's a leftover, but I'm not sure.
I know there's some Soviet stuff on the other side, on the far side of the moon. I think the Soviets were the first to get there in 1959. Not get there, but they sent a satellite round which could view the far side of the moon. And so
Luna 3.
Luna 3, was that it? Okay. So then they obviously had the Soviet mountains on the other side of the moon. And I think Moscow is back there as well, I believe.
Is it really? Right.
Yeah.
I love just very quickly on that. I love that the first ever Earthling that made it to the moon. We often think of it as the Apollo astronauts, and this is I'm talking about reaching the moon and going around it. But it was actually a Russian tortoise, and it was part of the Zond 5, and it came back to Earth and it survived. So the first ever Earthling was the slowest, creature on the planet by fable, and it survived. It came back to tell the tale.
Yeah, and went to the far side of the moon, which is the side of the moon we don't see from Earth. Yeah. So it could have made up all sorts of stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just love that so much. Do you know what really made me sort of appreciate the size of the moon in a way that I've not. So I find it conceptually quite hard to picture how big the moon is, but I read somewhere that it is just a bit less wide than Australia is.
Yes.
I mean,
okay.
Isn't that amazing? Like, that really helps me to visualize now what I know. Obviously I only know Australia from the atlas and comparative. I haven't seen all of it.
You did live there.
And I lived there for my teenagers. Oh, what do you got?
See, this is my ill-advised name of my box of balls. I don't leave home without it. But I've got actually, let me try and see if I can get somewhere where you can actually see it. But I've got two balls. One is Earth size and one is moon size, just to put it into perspective.
Right.
So, so the moon is sort of quite small compared with the Earth, but it's one of the largest moons in comparison to its planet in the solar system, and that makes an awful lot of difference because it's almost like we're almost like a binary system. I think only Pluto's moon Charon is sort of bigger in compared with Pluto, and that's more sort of
Sharon.
A system as well.
Was she named after someone down the Queen Vic in a spat?
I can't remember. I think it's Greek, and so it's, yes, the way it's spelled. Well, you could pronounce it Sharon, but it's Sharon, really.
And because it's so much smaller, it has much less gravity, right, Maggie?
Yes.
And I was reading this the other day. I'm a bit of a golf fan, and there's a new golfer who's just come in the last few years called Bryson DeChambeau, and he can hit the ball further than anyone else in the world. And they reckon if he was on the moon, he would be able to hit his golf ball 3.4 miles. Can you imagine?
Yes, because there was I can't remember which astronaut, but they had a number of sort of lunar landings, and and people were getting a bit bored with them, and they were sort of doing little antics. Yeah, hey, look at this skit, and one did actually sort of hit a golf ball.
It was Alan Shepard, wasn't it?
Shepard, yeah.
And when he hit it, he said, "Wow, that's gone miles and miles and miles." And I did a quick calculation a number of years ago, and it did literally go sort of, I think, about 2 miles, and it's taking into account what sort of iron he was using, and less friction in the air and all sorts, but it really would literally go miles and miles.
If you hit it well, if you hit a good shot.
They've had a look at him hitting it. So you're saying you did a calculation of sort of the average golf shot to work out how far it would go? Because he said, "Oh, I bet that's gone miles." They recently found evidence of how far it went. This just came out a few months ago, and it's like 100 meters or something. It's something really embarrassing.
I think it's 24 yards. It is.
24 yards.
That's not. Is that good in Earth golf, James? I believe that's not even good in Earth golf.
It is not good. I would fancy one of you four would be able to hit it that far.
Right, but he didn't have a proper club, did he? He had like an improvised stick. That he was. He didn't bring up a golf club.
He's 7-0, and he was wearing a very bulky spacesuit, so we can cut him some slack.
But Bryson DeChambeau wears very bad trousers, so
he actually plays in an astronaut suit. That's how. So he's ready. If Bryson had to go retrieve the ball, and he had to get there as efficient and as quick as possible, do you know what the best way for him to do that is in terms of his walking style?
Don't I like jump?
Sort of I'll call it gambling over the moon's surface.
Yes,
that's nice,
that's kind of skipping. It. There was a 5-volume report that was done about the best way to move on the moon by a NASA employee called Walter Kushniger, and he came up with the idea that the best way to do it, and we're harking back to Australia here, is the kangaroo hop.
Okay.
If you bounced like a kangaroo, you're getting the best movement. So it is a hop, but it's not a one-footed hop. It's the two legs at the same time. This is, James, you're looking skeptical. This is NASA.
But I think that kangaroos use their tail to push themselves along a lot, don't they?
You must have a tail to your suit. He also had that in the 5-volume report. That was most of the 4 volumes was the hop.
Well, maybe the horses of the moon will be kangaroos when we're looking for our mode of transport. It sounds like we should be riding them.
Ooh. So space kangaroos does sound cool, though. I mean, I'd go for that.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got that.
You're suggesting to climb in the pouch? Because that's not going to be nice, is it?
I think I might have outgrown the kangaroo pouch.
I don't know if it's the pouch that we put. I mean, just sort of being on the moon, the lack of sort of breathable air, the extreme temperature ranges. So from minus 200 to plus 200 as you go from the night side to the day side. So there's a few other challenges. I mean, the pouch might be the least of your problems.
These are all surmountable. These are all things we can deal with. I love the fact that there have been photos developed on the moon. There was a photo lab on the moon briefly.
Really?
Yeah, because they wanted to develop them when they were up there, and liquid chemicals don't work when they're I guess due to the gravity thing. So they had to use chemical gelatin, and then there was such a complicated means of getting the photos back home. So I'm going to try and get this right. They dropped the film from space. They were jettisoned. I'm not sure why they weren't just brought back on the shuttle. Maybe it was a non-shuttle mission. They were dropped from space in capsules with heat shields, and obviously you need heat shields, then parachutes, and then there was a recovery plane which was aiming to hook the parachuting photos as they were brought back in. It's almost always failed.
Right.
Because I've heard of this, but it wasn't from the moon landings.
Okay.
It was when they first started doing when they first went into space, they had no idea what they were going to do with it, apart from space the Ruskies. But then they realised that when they were up there, they could actually take Earth observation images, and you could sort of observe the Russians from a safe distance. And so they started taking pictures in space. But then what they did is they had no. It wasn't digital, so they had no means of getting the images back. So they'd take the film in huge canisters. They'll drop from the satellite and slow down on the Earth's atmosphere, and then they had little beacons. And I met a chap who used to actually sort of hook these in.
No.
And they kept on doing it. Yeah, seriously. And I saw one of the canisters in a museum in the States. And they kept on doing this. But then they stopped when they realised that when they were trying to get their canisters, there was a Russian sub underneath. So if they missed, which they often did, went in the sea, as you said, the Russians were going to sort of collect the images and say, aha, so this is what they were up to. So they gave up.
The wacky races model of...
How do you... I feel like you train for that job by going to play hooker duck at every time.
Step back, kids. I need this.
Government business. We're trying to defeat the Russians.
Wow.
Yeah. We were talking about the temperature before, Maggie. I wonder if you can tell me if you think this sounds reasonable. I read the other day that the average temperature on the moon has gone up by 2 degrees since the 1960s. And the reason being that the footprints of the astronauts absorb more light than if they hadn't stood on it. So it means that more light gets absorbed into the planet, into the satellite, and it warms up. Don't know if it's true.
Yeah, I doubt that, because one of the things about the surface of the moon, it is being constantly pummeled with craters and things like that, which sort of disrupt the surface, and the footprints in terms of surface area would be so tiny.
Yeah,
I find that hard to believe.
Do you think that the footprints might not really be there as much anymore because of what's been pummeling, or?
So, because I think the pummeling happens on sort of big and small scale. So, for instance, we had the meteorite sort of landing in Gloucester recently.
Yes.
And so, that probably made a small impact crater if they can find it. The things hitting the moon, some are tiny bits, some are big boulders, but not so often. So, I think they're probably safe. And if nothing hits them, they'll be there for effectively billions of years, because there's no weather erosion apart from the sort of lumps of rock hitting the moon's surface. There's nothing else to disturb them, so they could be there literally for millions of years.
Wow. Mind you, that feels like big weather. If I watched the weather forecast and they said clear day, completely calm, absolutely nothing except the huge lumps of rock that will be flying on random intervals, we're all good.
But how about the moon quakes? Because there are moon quakes, aren't there? And I've never heard of that before, and that's such an exciting concept. But surely that could shift the.
Well, is it? But it's not plate tectonics like we have.
Okay.
Because on the Earth's surface, I mean, we have sort of a liquid core and stuff like that, and it's sort of a tectonic plate smashing together. The moon quakes are caused by sort of thermal expansion and contraction. Because if you think of sort of 200 degrees on one side, 200 degrees on the other side, so that's sort of huge thermal sort of contractions and expansions. And of course, as the moon rotates, the sunlight's hitting different sides of it. But there are other moon quakes. Also, when a quake does occur, another cause of moon quakes is when sort of a large meteorite sort of smash into the surface. They can cause ringing, and we know about these moon quakes because the Apollo astronauts left seismometers, and so we can actually pick these up.
Yes.
But there are some quakes which we have no idea what causes them, and the moon almost sort of rings like a bell, and we have no idea what's sort of triggering that.
So what is it? Really the vibrations that's causing the ringing? Is that the vibrations? What's ringing it?
We know about the sort of the impacts, and that sort of causes some ringing. We know about this sort of expansion and contraction, and that can cause sort of these moonquakes. But others we sort of we pick up and sort of, what was that? Yeah, where did that come from?
But, the clangers, maybe the clangers.
It's the kangaroos. They've got that.
The kangaroos.
The kangaroos.
Who knows what's inside the moon? That's the question.
Well, I read a book, Maggie, called "Who Built the Moon?"
Oh no!
Where
There we go.
a theory has been put forward that because it rings like a bell, it must be hollow inside, therefore it must be artificial. The theory then takes an even worse turn to suggest that it was future humans time traveling backwards that invented the moon in order for humans to be in existence at all. It's a sort of weird parallel loop that needs the
I'm really glad that Rhys Darby managed to get his book published in the end. That you
look at that! The conspiracists have somehow managed to travel back in time and pull Dan's feed. Very nice, good work.
I think part of it is true because I did say I'm a lunatic, and that's, it wasn't me. I didn't touch it.
truth there. The government took me out.
They don't want the truth out there. So, but the idea, I don't believe the moon's hollow. I think with the size ministers and things
I
like
don't
that.
as well, by the way. I don't believe that book. I just want to state that.
Yeah, that's what you say now. But the fact that we need the moon to be here on Earth, it seems like a plausible theory. Because as I was mentioning, the moon is quite large compared with the planet it's orbiting. And the moon sort of takes some hard knocks for us. Some of the meteorites that would come onto Earth actually go to the moon instead. So yeah, so it takes
It's like a little bodyguard.
Yeah, I know. It's like, wait, back, pick it off. You're not going in.
Get out of here, Sharon.
But also things like the tides. There's, I think it was Darwin that said that life began in rock pools, and some experiments have been done. Some people still query this, but it was the movement of the tides in and out of rock pools that sort of you can set up an experiment, and that creates RNA, which is the precursor to DNA. And so without that tidal movement, maybe we wouldn't be here. So I think it's definitely necessary.
Oh, that's a lovely idea. I really like that.
Yeah.
Maggie, I've got a question. Have you ever eaten a piece of the moon?
Okay.
See, that's a slightly loaded question.
Okay, there is a reason I asked.
What about a Mars?
Galaxy. So I would think yes. Well, because the way the moon, we believe the moon formed. Because there's this idea that sort of a planet about the size of Mars sort of impacted the early Earth, and then sort of it left sort of a bit of itself behind on Earth, and then but the debris sort of coalesced to form the moon. So in that respect, that some of it must have been left behind and sort of integrated into the Earth, and then sort of the chemicals. So it's a long, convoluted argument, but I could believe it. I'd like to think so.
That's such a better and more scientific answer than I deserve. Because the only reason I ask is because there was an interview a few years ago with a meteorite hunter. There are only about 20 full-time meteorite hunters in the world, because obviously it's a tough way to make a living. But if you do find a few, then you can sell them for a lot. And one of them, Michael Farmer, was interviewed. He's had an amazing career. He was imprisoned in Oman for months. He's been nearly killed, and he's been arrested all over the world. But he said in this interview, "I've eaten a small piece of every moon rock and Mars rock that I have purchased or found. Not many people can say they have eaten a piece of the moon, and I know for a fact that numerous other scientists have done the same."
Really?
So I was curious.
Wow.
Yeah.
I must admit, I have never licked a meteorite. Well, not that I'm going to confess to, just in front of you now. But
It's a very personal question, and I think it was rude of Andy to ask. So
that's why I think the general answer.
yeah, I mean, this is so basic, but I've always found the really weird thing about standing on the moon, if any of us were to stand on the moon, is the idea that because there's no atmosphere, the sky is always black when it's light. I find that such a hard thing to conceive. As a human, where our sky goes black when it's dark,
Yes.
you're standing on the moon, you can see everything, and the sky's black. How is that working?
And it will be really bright and vivid because it's sort of unattenuated sunlight. It's not sort of scattered by anything. So I think it'll be sort of the contrast would be mind-boggling.
Yeah, take sunglasses. Okay.
And they did have visors on the spacesuits. I think because of that, the glare would be too much to handle. So.
Cool.
So I would love to do that. But I think the thing I would most love to do is stand on the moon and then look back at sort of a crescent Earth or something like that. To see the Earth from the moon. It gives me shivers thinking about it.
Yeah. They always say that's the moment, don't they? When they go up, the lads out into space, onto the ISS, they always say the most incredible thing is looking back at Earth.
Yes, and I think there's something called the cupola, which is like let's say conservatory, but that gives the wrong impression. I guess sort of little domed area, and I think they queue up. So no, why go in the cupola? Yeah, I want to go and look. I think because everything you know and love is there, and you're remote from it. So it's sort of wonderful and scary at the same time.
Well, it's that wonderful. And if anyone watching has not heard the words of Carl Sagan talking about pale blue dot, the pale blue dot, it is truly the most kind of humbling, but also perspective giving. I've never heard anything quite like it to make you understand your place in the universe. Look at us in the distance. Basically, it was when the Voyager was going out. I think it was Voyager. Yes. He had it turn around and take a photo, and in the distance is a pale blue dot, and that's us. That's everyone you've ever known, ever loved, every war ever fought in this vast universe. It's wonderful, and it's also amazing having people like you, Maggie, sort of be in those kind of roles that Carl Sagan and all those great science communicators have done. You're what make kids want to be curious about what's going on in the world.
And I'm blushing here.
You sit in such an amazing place of inspiring people. It's truly awesome to have you on the show. We're going to have to wrap up, unfortunately.
I've just yapped.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's been so cool having you. Thank you so much for making time out in space to join us on this satellite link. And thank you for giving your time for Comic Relief. I hope everyone who's watching, you can donate to say a little thank you for Maggie giving her time for us tonight. And we hope to see you again soon.
Oh, I so look forward to it. Yeah, and please, people out there, do donate. Some fantastic causes are here, and they need the help, so please donate. But thank you so much for having me, and I will go away with a blush now.
Well, thank you, Dr. Maggie. We will be back in a couple of minutes with our next guest. It is the very exciting, basically the god of these marathons, Mr. Mark Watson. We'll see you in a couple of minutes. Hey everybody, we hope you enjoyed watching that video from our 20-hour-long No Such Thing as a Fish Comic Relief Marathon. There are plenty more videos to watch, but before you watch them, we're going to ask you to donate to the cause that we did this for. Go to the link below and you will be sent to comicrelief.com/fish where you can donate and help change lives. Donate now.